Madam Speaker, I'm not proposing to rehash the debate that has already taken place in the committee that would have reviewed the proposed amendments. But some points have been made which are valid points. Concerns have been raised, particularly by the member from St. Andrew South East, which, like that member, I have communities of similar profile and indeed would raise similar concerns. The member's pointed question is that where do I go if there is a flare-up of gang activity in my constituency? It is a question that members of parliament who have inner city communities, who represent particularly in urban areas, and more so now we are seeing a spread into rural Jamaica, that gang activity, particularly involving young men, is a growing concern. The government has to take a comprehensive approach to treating with the issue of violence and specifically youth in violence. I want to inform the member that when it comes to gang activity, flare-up in communities, especially if it involves youth, yes, you may need social work intervention. Yes, some of the youngsters are probably misled. Some of the youngsters are probably from broken homes. Some of the youngsters may have been diverted into a life of crime. And it requires clinical, sometimes, intervention, psychological intervention, and for want of a better term, a kind of social support, social work kind of intervention. There are many agencies of government that provide that kind of support. But outside of that, if it is that the member is saying that in his constituency there are young men involved in criminal activity that is causing a flare-up, then the first port of call would be the police, the police community safety branch. And they have well-trained, specialized skills in intervening in these kinds of situations, not only from a policing perspective, but many years ago, the call was, we need to invest in community policing. And we have invested significantly, substantially, in developing community policing. Hold on, we're coming to all of those, because we have to stand up and dispel the false narratives. We have invested heavily in increasing the capabilities of our police force, in not just to respond in a unidimensional way. That's number one. Once they, and we have seen this all the time, every member inside here, at some point in time, if they have had a gang flare-up, would have been invited by the police commander, come let us have our community group meetings. Come let us have the community walks. I have participated many times, and I'm certain, exactly, member, so have all of you. Then how could you stand up and say that where do you go to? How could you stand up and say that? No, but, Madam Speaker, the police... Let me address that. So, it is not accurate, and I'm being euphemistic, to say there is nowhere to reach out. The appropriate place where the intervention for criminal activity, youth deviance that is aligned with criminal activity is in the police. That's number one. Outside of that, Madam Speaker, once the police are aware of the nature and profile of the young people, because the member raised the issue in a particular context, his concern for young people, particularly those below 18. That's my recollection of what you said. Now, once the profile of the problem has been established, and they have dealt with the criminal element, and they have established safety, then they move now to the case managers. They have, again, specialized resources in the police force. Again, not unidimensionally focused on just merely policing. The numbers, we must admit, would not be appropriate and sufficient to the magnitude of the problem. But I would say definitively that the numbers are increasing and the investment to support them is increasing. And that is without question. Those case managers, along with other resources, including the justice centers, including support from JSF, all of them come together to focus on the community. Now, if the situation rises to the level, Madam Speaker, where it has been established that the intervention requires more than regular policing, then we would declare a zone of special operations, which we have done, and they have been successful in the communities that have traditionally flared up. And it has worked effectively, without question, Madam Speaker. And that brings together all the state agencies that focus development support in the communities. And I have gone through in my budget presentation and listed all the interventions and the massive budget that has been spent on community intervention, on youth intervention, and all the interventions, the social interventions. Now, bear in mind, Madam Speaker, bear in mind that outside of the zones of special operations and the efforts of the security forces, the problem of unattached youth is one that one of the greatest methods of intervention for unattached young people. Yes, they need guidance and they need the social work, but you know what? Madam Speaker, member from Southeast, they also need work. Their hands and minds and hearts need to be engaged. And that is why this government stands proudly to say that we have cut significantly, in more than half, youth unemployment in this country. Unattached youth in this country is at the lowest level it has ever been. And we announced recently programs that will pull in our unattached youngsters who have been idle in communities for a long time. Our youngsters have now more opportunity to be integrated into the mainstream of the society and find meaningful employment. This does not say, Madam Speaker, that we still do not have, as every society would have, a problem with youth deviance. Youngsters who are misguided, youngsters who have psychological problems, youngsters who fall in conflict with the law for whatever reason. That is why we have put resources into the CPFSA. We have enhanced the capacities of both the Justice Center, but more so the Ministry of education, through schools, right? We have made a massive investment, Madam Speaker. One of the most advanced intervention capabilities in the therapeutic center, which we have built at Maxfield, is it Maxfield Park Children's Home. In effect, Madam Speaker, we intend to expand this with at least, I think, plans for 2 others, which bring together all the clinical and psychological interventions necessary to treat with our youngsters in that way. So I want to strongly counteract this narrative that there is no coordinated effort of the government. There is a study, Madam Speaker, done by Capri, and it looked at the government's intervention strategy between 2007 to 2018. It's a 10-year study. And that study concluded, Madam Speaker, that close to 70% of the budget for intervention did not reach to the target who needed it, the young people. So we did, and that is why we mainstream the budget into the agencies that are already paid to deliver those services. And that is why, under this strategy, we are able to have institutional development, as you are seeing with the police. There's no question, no one can question the investment in the institutional development of the police force. That is why you're seeing an expansion in the outreach of the Ministry of Justice in a coordinated and strategic way with the justice centers, with mediation. That is why you're seeing greater output from the Ministry of Education in dealing with our young people, particularly through the CPFSA. That is why you're seeing interventions being targeted through JSIF with the zones of special operations. So this false notion must be destroyed in the minds of the public. Now, Madam Speaker, there is the argument being preferred, again, another smokescreen. We must bring the evidence. Bring the evidence. Look, when as legislators, we cannot legislate by emotion. Right? We can't just get up one day and say, we don't like this and therefore. We have to look at the problem from an objective way. We have to be objective in our analysis of the problem. Madam Speaker, the notion that somehow we are going to be warehousing people in our jails. Jamaica has the lowest incarceration rate in the region. The lowest incarceration rate. Now let's just establish, the government is not saying that incarceration is the answer. That's not the argument. Hold on. Relative to other jurisdictions of similar profile of Jamaica, and when you compare our sentencing, different business from jails. Now, when you compare our sentencing system, again, Jamaica is not the, we don't have the strongest sentences. There is value, a deterrence value, in a system of penalties that have strong deterrent effect. There's no question about that. And that is why you have this strong and overwhelming call, which I'm certain the member from St. Mary Western is going to again make his plea to this House regarding going to even greater extremes. The truth is that we need to revise our sentencing regime to bring it in line with the magnitude of the problem that we have. Now let's look at the numbers. How many youngsters we have charged for murder over the last, say, 5 years? You have the number? Just remind, what's the number? You have it there? No, I just want to know. You are saying, the truth is, you have the number there? From 2019. So from last year, none. From 2022 onwards. So from 2019 to 2022, we have 79 youngsters. Under 18. Under 18. Under 18. I'm going based on the context of the member from Southeast. 17 and under, yeah. Have been arrested for murder. Yeah. It is a significant number over 3 years for youngsters. Certainly we would want it to be much lower. But I would not say that this represents a crisis situation over 3 years. And I would say that in the last 2 years, the numbers have been actually lower. No, I don't have that data. I'm just saying arrested. Now, I will get you that evidence. I will get you that data. Now, Madam Speaker, we have put in place a commission to study this issue of violence generally, but in particular, this issue of youth violence. And I agree that it is something that you can't use hard policing measures to solve. You have to pay attention to the underpinning social issues. There is no question about that. But at the same time, Madam Speaker, the government must take a comprehensive approach. And our approach, I think, it's far more comprehensive than we have ever had. Far more comprehensive and strategic than we have ever had. These 79 youngsters, which from 2019 to 2022 would have been arrested for murders. I am certain that after the passage of this bill, and they get the understanding of what the consequence of their actions are, in the same way that we are already seeing increased recovery of firearms, but a reduction as well in shootings. In other words, the new Firearms Act, which has adjusted upward the penalties, we are already starting to see the impact of the legislation on the decisions of our young people in relation to firearm crimes. And you're going to see that reverberate right throughout the society. The stiffer penalties, the stronger penalties, the adjusted penalty regimes will have a deterrent effect on crime and criminals in the country. So I urge the members opposite to give credit to the policies of the government and to acknowledge them. And where, Madam Speaker, any of them may be having any challenge in accessing any service, or they don't know of any service, it's a simple matter, Madam Speaker, of just reaching out with a phone call. And you have called me, you can call the minister, to any of us, and we can point you in the right direction. We can point you in the right direction. So, Madam Speaker, I rest my case.
Closing out for now, this is One Avenue News. Avenue for your news, views, reviews, and much more. New spot on the block where we chat.
Can you hear me though?
To yes, in the comment section. So click the subscription
the point I was
button,
making
turn on notification
when the Prime
bell.
Minister
Let's
showed
journey together. And please remember, we need solution, not confusion. United we win, my people. Art of love.